Week number 4 in NFL DFS was the week of the rookie quarterbacks. They finally showed some life this past week across the NFL for those first round picks. It was not the week of the running backs I used in my core for daily fantasy. Firmly not there. We're going to break things down, recap the rookie quarterbacks, let you know about some usages, role changes, some key injuries, and let you all know what it means going forward. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, I am shocked you're letting me be on this podcast today, given how poorly our Baker Mayfield versus Taylor Heineke bet went, where you absolutely wiped the floor with me. And I'm surprised you let me come here.
Well, I mean, look, you had the David Montgomery game that I was not quite so in on. Unfortunately, we'll talk more about David Montgomery. But you had some good calls. I think you and I both had some calls that didn't work out. And the reason I'm not really gloating this bet is because I'm too busy kicking myself for not playing more Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley. In hindsight, really stupid. Also should have had the foresight to think smarter and play those guys.
Yeah, I think that I'm more regretful about Saquon, and I think that the running backs, like I had some things that went very well for me on Sunday. Like I had a lot of Tyreek, had a lot of Cornell Patterson. Those went well. I had some Derrick Henry and Antonio Gibson, stuff like that. But like it was all wiped out by Chuba Hubbard and Dalvin Cook, who I was a bit too aggressive with. And honestly, like that was bad process. The way the aggressiveness with which I used them was bad process. And I'm okay admitting that right now. So I think I just went too hard at uncertain situations, whereas I knew Saquon Barkley was going to play 85% of the snaps. Tough matchup for sure. And like I thought there was risk that the offense might just not operate with no Sterling Shepard and no Darius Slayton, but then Daniel Jones kind of balls out. So I know why I didn't use them. I don't think the reasons I used were enough to justify not using them.
Yeah. And running back to me at this point, without Christian McCaffrey fully healthy, if Dalvin Cook's going to be banged up, Aaron Jones was limited a bit. Lots of AJ Dillon this week with 40% of the snaps. I think I might need to like change what I anticipate from running backs and not get out over my skis. Usually, you and I are people who can play almost a lock button on running backs. If there are going to be concerns, specifically like Chuba Hubbard comes to mind right now. I mean, it's worth it occasionally to go really hard. I'm thinking back also to Najee Harris in, I guess, week 2, whenever his role was great. And I actually clicked the lock button on him. And he was just
Alexander Madison last week, same thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it can work out. But Chuba Hubbard was probably more of a red flag than some of those other situations.
Yeah, it turns out that definitely was the case. We'll talk about that during the role changes for sure. So definitely some things went wrong. We'll talk about things that went right too, and recap week number 4 in just one second. But first, hey, football fans, FanDuel is giving you the chance to bet on week 5 of the NFL season. All you got to do is go to sportsbook.fanduel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Place a 3+ leg same game parlay on any week 5 NFL game. If your bet loses, get a refund and site credit. Max refund is $10. Bet on week 5 of the NFL season with FanDuel by heading over to the FanDuel Sportsbook today and placing a risk-free NFL same-game parlay. Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Refund issued as a non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports and all states on mobile and web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the Red Line at 1-800-899-9789. In West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Or in Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. Let's start things off here with our week 4 headlines, which does revolve around those rookie quarterbacks who showed life in week 4 for the first time this year. And honestly, all of them I think gave us reasons to be like at least interested, which is good because that's a deviation. That's fun. We like these quarterbacks. They're all pretty fun. So I'm excited about that. Let's start things off on Thursday with Trevor Lawrence. He made the Jaguars relevant on Thursday against a decent Bengals defense. Unfortunately, though, comes with an injury here. DJ Chark fractured his ankle. He is out likely for the season. In this game, we saw a lot of Laviska Shenault. Shenault had 7 targets on 18 routes. He had 2 deep targets in that game, which is a pretty big deviation from what he had been doing before. Marvin Jones has had decent games earlier this year, and Shenault might be more relevant now with DJ Chark out. So Brandon, Trevor Lawrence shows life. We have some more opportunity available potentially with DJ Chark missing time. How are you viewing this Jaguars offense right now?
So I got to take it from, I think, the top with Trevor Lawrence, and you and I have been kind of, I don't want to say stubborn, but we've been very adamant about making sure that we're rostering quarterbacks who we think have clear paths to 30 FanDuel points, or at least 20, 25 to 27, kind of on the low end. And that did not put me on someone like a Sam Darnold this week, but he had those 2 rushing touchdowns. And other than him, it was just Patrick Mahomes. So I don't want to get ahead of myself and say, yeah, Trevor Lawrence is someone that I'll see myself using plenty, just because I need to make sure that the sheer end upside is there. For Laviska Shenault, I am always, I think, lower on him than a lot of people. A lot of people seem to love him, and I get it. He's fun. But the ADOT is historically really low. And you mentioned the 2 downfield targets. The one was on a completely busted play. And I need to see, I think, a little bit more of a concentrated effort to get him the ball down the field. Now, without Chark, the volume's going to go up. So he's going to be, speaking of low ADOT busted play guys, he's like a Deebo Samuel situation. I'm always going to have trouble with someone like that because there's a bit of a floor from a target perspective. And we want, you can never really turn down guaranteed volume. But I'm not fully buying in on the fact that he gets multiple downfield targets per game.
I think you mean last year Deebo, correct? Because this year's Deebo has a different role from a target depth perspective.
What's his ADOT?
I don't know, but he had 3 downfield targets. Like, it wasn't just a busted play yesterday. He had 3. That's the most he's had since week 11 of his rookie year, tied a career high. He had 3 downfield looks all of last year. So I think it's a different, like he talked about trying to get more downfield work this year. I'm pretty sure it's a fairly concerted effort. So I think 2020 Deebo Samuel is a different player than 2021. But if you're putting Laviska Shenault in the 2020 Deebo Samuel bucket, I'd agree.
So he had 3 downfield targets this week, which we classify as 16 yards or more downfield. His ADOT was 9.6. Wide receiver average is 10.7. So it's still a full yard.
Mike Williams is around there too, though. Like, it's not like there's a big difference between a 9-yard ADOT and a 5-yard ADOT, which is probably where Deebo was last year.
His ADOT
it was 2.2 last year, and it's 7 this year.
On the full season, it's 7.7. It's still, I'm saying, just from a sheer ADOT standpoint, which, yes, there's those downfield targets, but if it's 2 to 3, that means like 6 or 7 are very close to the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
That makes it hard for me to kind of value, and that's what I'm getting at.
Now I'm mad about Deebo. This is not the point of this.
No, I know, but I work a lot on like simulations and ranges of outcomes, and one key part of figuring out an actual range of outcomes for wide receivers just comes down to air yards, which you are always going to have come out as lower for a low ADOT guy. Yes, Deebo can get like, I'm not gonna say he's gonna average 3 per game. He's averaging 1.5 per game, which is good for him. But I think it's going to be a similar case to Shenault, where let's say he gets 1 or 2 downfield targets a game, doesn't convert on them, then we're looking at those 6 to 7 or 8 maybe like targets at the line of scrimmage or 5 yards downfield.
So I agree with you on Laviska. With Deebo, his yardage totals are 189, 93, 52, 156. We'll come back to this later. You're wrong. Deebo, 2021 Deebo is great. Also, he's good at football. You're not factoring that in. Anyway, I agree with you on Laviska. Pretty similar to 2020 Deebo, where he can get some work, but the upside's probably not going to be there. So I think I'd still be on Marv over Laviska on this team. Agreed?
Yeah, it did not work out for me on the single game slate, but Marv's ADOT's basically twice what Chenault's is, and if anyone's going to benefit more from the lack, because DJ Chark was getting peppered downfield, he was averaging, or even with week 4 factored in, he's averaging 3 downfield targets per game, and he basically didn't play in week 4. So
yeah, so I think we still go Marv over Laviska, but Laviska does get a bump up. Is it enough to make him relevant? Probably not. Dan Arnold did run 10 routes after being traded like 3 days before this game.
Yeah.
Do you have any interest there? Because like I feel like I would need to see more before I go there, because it's not like it's a great team I truly want to invest in.
Yeah, it's kind of what I was getting at with the Trevor Lawrence situation.
Yeah.
This probably just makes me feel better about Marvin Jones.
I think I agree.
Like that's kind of the takeaway is I liked Marv before, but I was always worried about Chark, and I like Chark as well. I'm not going to play a whole lot of Laviska. If it burns me, it's going to have to burn me from another busted play or a lot of run after the catch, which I know like from his, I don't want to say film, but like I know that's kind of what he is known for, but it hasn't really panned out a lot in the NFL.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. So let's talk about Justin Fields. Didn't throw a ton, but he made the most of it when he did. The Bears, very run heavy. They ran 17 of 24 times on early downs in the first half. But on those 7 throws, Fields averaged 0.95, passing net expected points per dropback. For reference, Patrick Mahomes is around 0.35 usually. So Fields is pretty good, averaged 0.32 for the full game. And he fed Darnell Mooney. He gave Mooney 7 of 17 targets. 2 of those 5 were deep. The one downside here is that David Montgomery got hurt. He hurt his knee and didn't return. Sounds like it might not be season ending, but the MRI is supposed to be today. Damien Williams played 33% of the snaps compared to 11% for Khalil Herbert. Williams had 8 carries and 2 targets. He ran 7 routes. Herbert had 3 carries. The carries were 6 for Williams and 2 for Herbert after Montgomery got hurt, which was pretty late in the game. So Fields played really well. He funneled volume to Darnell Mooney, but they might not have Montgomery, and they are very, very run heavy. So how are you viewing the Bears right now, Brandon?
Yeah, they actually led in non-garbage time pace, according to the 20 to 80% pre-snap win probability numbers that come from NFL Faster. FastR, I don't know. But the issue is, well, along with that, it's kind of a trend we've seen since Fields has been more involved. Since week 2, they've ranked top 10 in pace the past 3 weeks, again, adjusting for context, and they're 4th combined since week 2. So you like that, but they're 31st in pass rate without just getting rid of the garbage time plays. So that's a big problem. That's not enough passing for me to want to play any quarterback. I don't care really how much you run. If you're actively trying not to pass, basically, that's an issue. I'm not saying they're not trying to pass, but like relative to other teams, you can make that claim. So I have interest in Darnell Mooney. Obviously, I will have interest in Allen Robinson, but it's been Mooney for Fields primarily. It's just, it's not enough for me to want to play Justin Fields, and it's hard for me to talk myself into pass catchers on teams with such low pass rates.
Yeah, they face the Raiders next week too, and the Raiders have a much better pass rush than the Lions do, so that could be a concern for Detroit or
It'll
Chicago.
Be a short week, I guess. Line.
Yeah, that does help. But they're on the road. Decent pass rush, especially compared to the Lions. That's a concern. Mm-hmm. And like realistically, given how they've shown us they want to play things, how many pass attempts are you projecting for Justin Fields? Like even in a negative script, like 25 to 30 max, maybe.
Yeah.
And it feels like let's say that Darnell Mooney hypothetically gets a 25% target share. So let's go with 27 times 0.25. That's 6.75 targets. Like that's not a lot. So I like Mooney a lot as a player. I like Justin Fields a lot as a player, but this offense is not super conducive to me getting jazzed about pass catchers.
Does Fields not have a passing touchdown yet?
I think he did in week 1 when he came on like a package. Yeah. Rushing touchdown.
Yeah. So he doesn't have a pass. passing touchdown. What is there a salary that would be low enough for you to want to play Justin Fields?
Well, he's 64, but like
Okay.
I just think that he didn't run a lot yesterday either, probably because they didn't drop back enough. Like you need
Yeah.
those scrambles. So like I just don't think like there is a path to 30, but I think that the odds I get that path are low enough where I'm okay holding off for now. And it's not because of him, it's because of the way they run the offense. And again, I think the offense worked well. So it's not a shot at them because I think they did Bill Lazor did a good job on Sunday, but it's not one that's like conducive to him being super fantasy relevant right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, almost every quarterback does have some path to 30, however small. Fields obviously has that, but I'm with you. It's the philosophy here is not ideal for DFS.
Let's talk about Damien Williams with no David Montgomery. We'll probably learn more today on the severity of Montgomery's injury. Hopefully it's good because I like David Montgomery a lot. But Damien Williams was getting work with David Montgomery earlier on this year. He got a lot of work after Montgomery got hurt. So let's assume that David Montgomery can't go this week. Name that salary on Damien Williams.
It's going to be a Chuba Hubbard situation where we get overconfident in his role, or do you feel better?
I feel about the same.
Okay. Because I do too. I would probably say about 6,500.
I think 65 is appropriate. And he is 58. So I also think that Damien Williams is pretty talented, and that helps. Like, that's not going to make me go like, oh, I'm going 100% because he's talented. It's like, oh, okay. I think the odds that, Rodney Smith comes in and takes away passing down work from him are maybe potentially a bit lower. Like, that might help. I don't know.
Yeah, again, we've had this with Najee Harris and Nyheim Hines. If Rodney Smith's coming in and taking Damien Williams' work, then we got some.
Yeah. I think that they like him and I like him, which helps. But it's still not a like if I were naming that salary, I would not go higher than what you did. I think that the 65 is appropriate. I think that's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those spots where it can feel really easy to get overconfident.
For sure. Let's move down to Zack Wilson. First good game for him in the NFL. Played some really tough defenses, played a not tough defense in the Titans. So he went from negative 0.35 passing net expected points per dropback in his first 3 games to 0.30 against the Titans. Got Jamison Crowder back in that one. He did go to Crowder a lot. 9 targets there, 7 for Corey Davis. Keelan Cole and Ryan Griffin both had 4. So they play on the non-main slate next week. They play Atlanta on that London game at 9:30. But just broadly, how are you changing your view of the Jets after what they did, showing life here against Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Crowder thing helps. No Elijah Moore, but look, Wilson, I think you and I were both high on him. Coming out of college, and it's easy to say to kind of write them off as just being the Jets, and it's like here's another quarterback that's not going to work out. But really difficult start to his NFL career, with the matchups. We could see veteran quarterbacks play those same defenses and struggle, but we wouldn't be just completely over it. So this was really promising. I'm kind of thankful that we will get them outside the main slate. Not that I'm really worried about Zack Wilson destroying me, but then I'll get another week outside the main slate where I can kind of analyze things because Atlanta will be a beatable defense. And, if he doesn't, then I guess maybe you could chalk it up to the travel and the weird game environment. But if he takes advantage of Atlanta, then that's going to turn me around on this offense. Yeah, and at least make Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder viable. That's kind of the only outcome really here.
The only downside of that London game is I think it decreases the odds that Elijah Moore plays, given that it's like an overseas travel situation following concussion, and we're not going to get a read on him with Crowder and with Davis until after their bye, because they have a bye in week 6. So, like the next time we'll see the Jets on the main slate is in week 7, where they play the Patriots, and So I think it's kind of a bummer. It is gonna be nice if we get confirmation against the Falcons, we can use them in good situations. That's something we will keep in the back of our head for later on this year and say, okay, when they struggle against the Patriots, not when they struggle against the Patriots, that's okay. And if you can be predictable in the spots where you're relevant, I think that's good. So I thought it was encouraging. Zack Wilson for sure.
Why do they play the Patriots twice by week 7?
Why do they play the Patriots at all? Patriots have never played an exciting game in their entire lives. It's just contract the Patriots. Trey Lance averaged 0.47 passing net expected points per dropback, came on in relief of Jimmy Garoppolo. He ran 7 times for 41 yards, and he had 20 FanDuel points and a half. He did have some broken coverages, but, still, I'll take 20 points. As far as where he threw, he went to Deebo Samuel 7 times. 2 of those were deep, and 1 was in the red zone. 4 times George Kittle and Mohamed Sanu. Those guys each had 1 deep target. Kyle Juszczyk had 2. Trent Sherfield had 1. Brandon Ayuk had none. Sick. Love to see it. So sounds like Jimmy Garoppolo probably on the wrong side of questionable for week number 4. The 49ers facing Arizona next week on the road. So I think we've seen enough, and I think we like this offense enough to actually name that salary on Trey Lance, because I think that he's very relevant for week number 5.
Yeah. This is one where I would probably pay higher. So again, this is always like, if you're asking me what I would like pay to roster him versus what I think he should be, I would probably go up to 8,000 for him.
Okay. What do you think he should be?
Probably like in the 76 range.
I think 76 is appropriate. And that may seem high because that's where like Dak and Russell Wilson were this past week.
Yeah, I'm trying to contextualize that, yeah.
But like, he's $6,900. Like, he's cash game viable at $6,900, right?
Yeah, with the rushing, like that's so we just talked about like the passing not being there for Justin Fields. We saw some life for sure with Lance. And again, we want to talk about Deebo Samuel. This is probably the time to do it.
Yeah.
I know Deebo has run after the catch potential. I know George Kittle, if he's healthy, has that. Brandon Ayuk, in theory, at least has that if he can get a catch, which first he would need a target in order to get some run after the catch. But, that's one of the reasons that I was so optimistic on Lance from a fantasy standpoint, just as a rookie, because he can probably just get the ball to these guys in some space and rack up passing yards.
Yeah.
But the rushing is really, really enticing for me. So I'm going to, definitely cash game viable. Obviously, we have to look more at the quarterback slate, but I'm going to be playing a lot of Trey Lance.
His ADOT is 8.1. Jimmy Garoppolo's is 6.7. He runs. His completion percentage over expectation is pretty bad. So like the actual like accuracy component probably not as good as what we have with Jimmy Garoppolo, but like
it's common too with higher ADOTs. Like
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, no, his completion percentage over expectation.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So
I think like I don't think it's an upgrade necessarily for like Deebo and Kittle, but like it's not like a massive downgrade either, I wouldn't think. Like probably a slight downgrade from a passing perspective, but the overall offense, I would say, is going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, and if you want Deebo to get more downfield targets, you want it coming from a higher ADOT quarterback.
So I think like Deebo is like, if you look at his target shares, like overall targets this year, Deebo Samuel is at 33%. You can get upside there even without getting a ton of downfield targets at 33%. Like that's like, I don't know. It's a good roll. He has 1.5 downfield targets per game. He's gotten some red zone work. He also gets some rush attempts, which can bolster his scoring output as well. I feel like when I say we, I mean you, are being a bit too dismissive of Deebo in his current role. 2020 Deebo is a different player. His ADOT was 5 yards lower.
I'm dismissive of. Wait, his ADOT was 5 yards lower than it is now?
Last year it was.
What was his ADOT last year?
2.
Oh. Well, so I'm dismissive of a low ADOT receiver at a salary. He was $6,900 this week. He converted on a short red zone catch, which was awesome to see. He also had a majority of his, I don't want to say majority because I don't know if it's actually the majority, but he had a ton of fantasy points come from a busted play, like a 70-yard touchdown.
Yeah.
I'm not banking on
32% target share. Like 33% target share. That doesn't count. He's had 12, 8, 10, and 12 targets. That's a lot.
Yeah, I know, but his single game ADOT has been 8, 6, 6.2,
Right, but
and
like if you're
9.6.
giving, like, it's a multiplier. You multiply 8 or whatever times 10, that's like 80 air yards. And like that's not great. But like you're giving him, you're talking about how good he is after the catch. You're giving him 8 chances to run after the catch. Like that has to account for something.
It does, but I know his salary was $6,900 this week. He had a huge game. If he is $7,500 or in that range, I don't think he quite matches up with.
No, I
other
agree, but
receivers.
he wasn't. So I mean, like it's different. Now he's 77, it's a different story. So
Did you say 77 or
he's 77 this week. That's a lot.
so? Like last week, I had DJ Moore at 73 and Debo at 69. I would rather play DJ Moore. Like
Yeah, probably.
let's say they were both 71. Just
but
split
like
the
DJ
difference.
Moore is like,
But
he's
there's all this
awesome.
context in order to play Debo Samuel that we have to consider.
Yeah, but
I'm
like,
not like down on Debo Samuel.
Debo Samuel or Adam Thielen. They're
Well,
almost the same salary. I'm not like
Debo
or DeAndre Hopkins right now. You can say it. It's
Pass.
fine.
Pass.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's
pass.
not that one's not fair. He's
Debo's salary is very high. Trey Lance's is not. We're gonna talk a lot about Trey Lance on Thursday. Very excited about that. What about George Kittle? Where are you at on him right now? He did get a deep target, which he doesn't typically do this past week. He actually had 3, only 1 from Lance. I've been pretty low on Kittle the past couple weeks. I'm still not like super eager to buy back in, but where are you at with him right now? And Kelsey is not in the main slate next week. I'll note that.
Oh boy, that might save me some. Either way,
this week was not great, man.
I either get it wrong or I'm playing Kelsey because he's the guy with that upside, and he just They give it to Jody Fortson.
Good for Jody
or Jordy. I think it's
no,
Jody.
it's Jody Fortson.
Yeah,
I've seen Forston, Jordy. I've seen a lot of different spellings of the wrong name.
Yeah, I mean for Kittle, he's obviously not George Kittle of the past right now, but his salary has kind of been. He was 6,700 for the week 4 main slate. That's got to come down for me really to want to prioritize him. So I'm kind of more in like we're starting to see some tight ends creep up over 6,000, like the Hawkinsons and those kinds of guys. I feel like he should be in that tier. Is that wrong?
He is. He's 65. I think that's a little bit too high
for
what
high.
his current
$200
role is.
Drop.
Yeah. I think that's for his current role. That's too high. Like I'd rather have him than Dallas Goedert, who's in that range. But like, that's kind of like asking the Adam Thielen question to you. So, Dalton Schultz is 62.
Oh boy,
good for him.
You mean Dalton Schultz, the target share leader for the Cowboys since week 2?
I do indeed. 23% target share. And he's looked good. He made a terrible mistake on Sunday, but they went right back to him after that. So that was pretty good. I think Kittle's too high. I think that Debo's salary is a bit too high right now. Like, I think it's going to make it tough for stacking for Trey Lance, but like, we do know where the ball is going, and I think that's reassuring, even if the salaries are a bit too high. Like, Lance's salary helps cancel out the fact that they're a bit too high salaried. Maybe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, way. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not going to do the math because I'll embarrass myself. But
right.
If like Debo and Lance were both like 72 or 73, that would be an easier stack to kind of wrap your head around.
Yeah. Okay. Final rookie quarterback outside of Davis Mills, because Mac Jones was decent on Sunday nights. He averaged 0.05 passing net expected points per dropback. Pretty rainy, and the Buccaneers pass defense was super banged up. That was better than it was for the full season at negative 0.09. So I guess that's good. He had 14 downfield pass attempts in week 3, but just 1 in week 4. So they kind of went back to the old Mac, return of the Mac. It's enough to keep Jacoby Myers relevant and like the new tight ends scored. But like, I think Jacoby Myers is like if Debo were on a worse offense and he weren't as talented.
Yeah. So like historically, you and I on this recap show would go game by game, and we would get to this game and talk about the Patriots and say, I'm not changing my opinion here. Like there's not enough. The running backs are complete dust.
Would you rather put your hand in a vice grip for 6 hours or use a Patriots running back in full slate daily fantasy?
Use the Patriots running back.
It's a terrible answer.
I
Your
mean,
tolerance for pain must be low.
So like when your lead receiver has as many downfield pass attempts as your starting quarterback, like that's not ideal.
He completed it too.
Yeah, and Jones didn't complete.
Is Jacoby Myers the best quarterback for daily fantasy on this team? Who can say?
Let's get Jacoby QB eligibility.
Yeah, I'm in for that. I just it's so hard for me to use anyone in this offense given how boring it is. And I mean boring in the sense I don't like to watch it, but also boring in the sense that it's a lot of hollow volume, the volume they do get. And the running backs don't get enough volume for it to matter to begin with. But the receivers, I think it's a lot of hollow volume. Jonnu hasn't had more than 6 targets this year. Hunter Henry hasn't had more than 6 targets. They're spread out. They're not getting downfield look. Jonnu had 2 last week, but I'm not going to use the tight ends. I don't want to use Jacoby Myers. I feel like this offense is a cross-off for me still.
Yeah, I mean, so a full season, Mac Jones has an ADOT of 7.6, which is kind of average.
Mm-hmm.
But his single game ADOTs have been 6.3, 4.6, 12.1.
Because they were down and they were desperate.
And then 5.3. So,
unless they get way behind, he's not chucking it deep. So and if they get way behind, they're way behind probably because the offense isn't working.
Yeah.
That's the concern there. Either way, I think the rookie quarterbacks, encouraging stuff from Wilson, Fields, Lance, and Lawrence does make their offenses more relevant, but important to keep in mind the context behind that as well. Talk about some more injuries here outside of the Chark ones, the Montgomery ones. Logan Thomas left in the first half with a hamstring injury, and he was ruled out. De'Ami Brown had a knee injury as well. Pretty big bummer to have a relevant tight end go down. Likely increases the role for Terry McLaurin a bit more because he's just got disgusting work right now. He had a monster game. He has 32% of the overall targets, 45% of the deep targets, and 33% of the red zone targets. Curtis Samuel played 36% of the snaps in his debut, ran 12 routes. He'll probably get some more work as his role expands. Ricky Seals-Jones did run 26 routes and get 4 targets, so might be an option at tight end. But McLaurin's role is firm and it is insane. So, Brandon, how are you viewing this Washington offense under the assumption that we see them without Logan Thomas for a bit here?
So, can I ask you a serious question before I say anything?
Sure.
I liked Taylor Heineke fine for this week in a very promising matchup, a good spot. I'm not going to want to play Taylor Heineke very frequently.
Yeah.
Have you seen enough from him that we can trust a McLaurin, or are you, because last year, or maybe it wasn't, but I've been a little bit on McLaurin than you. I know you're past that hesitation, but do you still have reservations on Terry because of the quarterback?
Yeah, my reservations with him have been different by year. The first year it was because of pace, because they were running this super run heavy, super slow offense. With Turner being the OC last year, they actually ran a pretty fast pace. So I was in there, but then the quarterback play catered and Dwayne Haskins was hideous.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Smith wouldn't throw downfield. This year, they have that pace still. It's pretty good. And Heineke's relevant. So the two reservations I've had are both gone. So I like McLaurin a lot.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to put you on the spot. I was basically saying.
It's a good question because I poo-pooed him plenty of times. This year is a very different situation.
Yeah, I mean, their pace has been really good. Overall.
And that's sustainable. That's a concerted thing that the coaching staff has done forever.
Yeah. So I have no issues with Terry. I don't know what his salary is going to be. He could be upper 7s easily, and it's justifiable. Probably should be with that workload. Yeah. Outside of that, though, I don't know. Maybe out of some value sprinkles of Ricky Seals-Jones, I can't really play Antonio Gibson anymore. He was
he was hurt.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, JD McKissic's been relevant, regardless.
He's played well too, so it's not like he's going to go away.
And so this week McKissic had 3 red zone rushes. Gibson had 1. I don't know exactly how that lined up with
Gibson had 1 out of 7 in the red zone. What total chances this week? Last week he had 3 of 8. He had none of 5 in week 2 and 1 of 4 in week 1. He's had 17, 16, and 18 adjusted opportunities the past 3 weeks. He had 30 in week 1. He has not gotten above 20 since. And he's had 73 yards in each game at least, but like he kind of needs to bust off a big one like he did last week to really contribute. It was a good matchup, and he just like the usage is just not where you want to be. Maybe they'll change as he gets healthier, but like kind of want to see it first.
Yeah, and like in terms of season long analysis, I was very aware of the fact that Antonio Gibson had to have some touchdown regression. Some like he's not going to score as frequently, and he hasn't. But he's also not really getting a huge workload increase. The kind of murmurs that he would be much more involved with the passing game hasn't quite been there. So like this offense, probably just McLaurin. And I'm going to look up Ricky Seals-Jones' salary just to see what we're looking at there.
43.
Okay. So like
I didn't look. I was just guessing.
He's 49. That's
that's high.
It's fair, but like it's been hard to get like value tight ends with like I feel like anyone who shows a pulse gets that bump right away.
Right. Which is fair, Yeah. But that's a lot for an uncertain role. They get New Orleans this week. New Orleans defense has played well before they ran into the freight train that is Daniel Jones. I think that like because the volume is so good from McLaurin, I wouldn't worry about the matchup there. But like maybe that decreases your interest in chasing guys with shakier roles, specifically Ricky Seals-Jones.
Name a salary for McLaurin.
I already saw it. It's upper 7s, so I think that's fair.
It's 74. It's not upper.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misread. We were talking about Debo before. McLaurin over Debo for me, pretty easily.
That's a very good example of where I am with Debo.
Well, but like he wasn't 77 last week. I was talking about like before his salary is $7,700.
What was McLaurin last week?
Like 71.
So McLaurin or Debo McLaurin at 71 and Debo at 69. I was
more inclined to stack the one game, and that influences most of my.
I'm trying to like put it in a vacuum. If they're similar salaries, I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin. Like, to me, Debo's workload is not comparable to someone like McLaurin.
I mean, it literally is because he's the same target share. I'm gonna find a Debo bet for this week. I'll find one.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I saw the top 5 salaries at receiver.
I didn't look above those guys. I'm gonna keep my mind clear. So we're gonna do a new segment called Salary Scroll later on. We're gonna scroll through salaries and see what stands out. So I'll hold off before I do.
I just saw the top 5 at receiver, but
okay. I think I'm doing receiver anyway, right?
No.
I'll do receiver. Teddy Bridgewater left due to a concussion. So Drew Lock came in. Lock was terrible. He was at negative 0.33, passing at expected points per dropback. In fairness, Teddy was at negative 0.27 before he left. They were already getting downgraded. They had some offensive line injuries at both guard spots. KJ Hamler gone, Jerry Jeudy out for now, and now they lose Bridgewater. So if Teddy misses time, how much are you downgrading the Denver offense under Drew Lock?
A lot. They were already a team where I really needed a reason to believe in their game. I liked Cortland Sutton this week, but I didn't really get there because I think his salary was $6,300. It's a really good salary for a receiver with that workload. I just didn't like the game a lot, so I didn't quite get there. So it's going to take a little bit more even for me to want to play these guys. Now, I will say Noah Fant had 6 of Lock's targets. Sutton had 5.
Doesn't matter. They're playing Pittsburgh next week. That's the worst game I've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
That's the worst game of the year.
That game screams 13-10.
I'll take the under on 23. Will Fuller hurt his hand for the Dolphins. He did not return. It led to some pretty concentrated targets for Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki. Parker, 9 total targets. 3 of those were deep. Gesicki had 6 total targets and 2 deep. They had the only 5 deep targets of the game. Jacoby Brissett is not great, but the volume is volume. So how are you viewing Parker and Gesicki if Fuller misses time again?
Yeah, I mean, Parker at a 97% route rate. Gesicki 73%. Like that's Parker had 127 air yards, 3 deep targets, 2 red zone targets, 2 end zone targets. I'm a Devontae Parker guy.
Yeah.
I can buy into that. And if there's any sign that I want to like trust the other side of the game, I can bring it back with Parker. Mike Gesicki was one of my loves this week on the preview pod, just because he was a tight end with some volume. We saw enough of that again this week where he would still be on the radar. I know he scored just the 6 targets, but that was 20% of the team's targets. He had a downfield target, a red zone target as well. So yeah, these 2 guys are on the list. Not sure about Jalen Waddell. I don't have confirmation.
They have a pronunciation guide on the website, and it doesn't have Jalen Waddell on there.
Yeah.
Like his family apparently says it's Waddell. Everyone calls him Waddle. So I get very insecure about every time I say his name. But I Googled Miami Dolphins pronunciation guide. You can listen to Mike Gesicki say his name that exact way, but there's no Jalen Waddle or Waddell, and it bothers me so much.
He probably knows. But I mean, he ran 85% of the routes, just 4 targets.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be Parker and Gesicki, and I just kind of feel okay with it.
Yeah, I think that the problem is they're facing Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's defensive line is going to bleep up. You can fill in the blanks there.
So I know you're not a red zone guy. We've had this discussion. You got to make sure you go back and try to find some film of Jacoby Brissett and some of the plays he made.
In a good way or a bad way?
No, just like kind of just like falling over and like dropping the ball.
So you pulled a Matt Ryan. Okay, good. Anytime you can compare someone to Matt Ryan when they're probably like 7 or 8 years younger than him, good. Just great. Revenge game didn't quite come through for old Jacoby there. The secondary for Tampa beat up, but like that defensive line is going to destroy worlds next week. Let's talk about some role changes here and interesting running back stuff right now. James Robinson was a feature back. Carlos Hyde was inactive, and I think that played a pretty big role here. But Robinson played 94 or 95% of the snaps, 8 of 20 running back carries for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. He ran 20 to 25 routes. I think it was 18 to 20 running back carries, ran 20 to 25 routes. Looked pretty good. Do we trust that when Carlos Hyde is back? Likely next week, though.
I don't know how you can in that situation.
So maybe that's how they're facing Tennessee, whose defense is wretched.
It's going to end up being higher than I want. I would say probably like 65.
I thought 63, and he is 74. My goodness.
I knew it was going to be like.
So he had a lot of work, even with Hyde active in week 3, 15 carries, 6 targets there. Maybe I underestimated. Maybe 63 is too low. But like, I'm not going 74. I guarantee that. Like, that's really high.
Yeah, that's, again, we like this offense more. I knew we were going to talk about Robinson more in depth. So I wanted to just save it. Now, he is one of 7 backs.
But like, will he next week?
Will he?
I didn't let you finish. I'm sorry.
He is one of 7 backs on the full season in healthy games to have played at least 70% of his team snaps. So it wasn't just week 4. The snap rate's been fine. The workload hasn't been as good as it was this week.
Yeah. 62% of the snaps, 74, 59, 95. He's topped 76 yards once. I'm okay not being there at 74. I think that's a little high if we assume Hyde is back. If Hyde's not back, then sure, I can go in then. But if he is back, I think we can be a little pessimistic. Daryl Henderson came back and played his old role, which was reassuring. I thought that was great. He played 89% of the snaps with 26 adjusted opportunities, which is carries plus 2x targets. He had 116 yards from scrimmage. We had talked before about not trusting him. I'm over that. I trust him now. Problem is they play Thursday, so they're not in the main slate. I would have been very high on Daryl Henderson against the Seahawks, and I'm really bummed they're not in the main slate. But thoughts for you on Daryl Henderson?
Well, it'll be a fun game for me for a change to go over on the Q&A show. It's been a rough 2 weeks since I took that show on. But Yeah, he was second behind only the aforementioned James Robinson in running back snap rate this week. Not a whole lot of 80% running backs in the NFL right now. So Henderson, I should have probably been more aggressive with him. I just didn't know if the workload would be scaled back because Sony Michel was at least viable in week 3. But now, yeah, it's going to be pretty easy to like Daryl Henderson again.
Yeah, I hope that he keeps that role through this week so we can use him on a main slate again. Hopefully he just kind of does well, but not like blows things up on Thursday. Dalvin Cook is still banged up. He missed a good chunk of the second half, but returned, did play the final 2 drives, finished with 51% of the snaps, 21 adjusted opportunities, 43% of the red zone chances. So it could have been worse, but obviously not fully healthy. So I think what I want to do, Brandon, they're playing Detroit this week. So I want to be there, but I want to see him get in a full practice by Friday. What about you?
That would help because I have to come a long way after this past week to want to play Dalvin. Not because I don't trust him. It's just I got burned. So, personally, I got to overcome that. But that totals 49.5. They're 7.5 point favorites. There's a chance that turns into like a Dalvin Cook doesn't play the fourth quarter game. I don't think it'll quite get there. But with that spread and with Detroit being, beatable.
Amazing. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Misinterpreted.
So the question is like, are they going to have to run him out with his full workload? Yeah. I know the team has said that like they need to win games and that Dalvin is basically how they win games. But if he's not 100% and they're beating the Lions pretty handedly, like, are they just going to play Alexander Madison? Because I would.
Yeah. I mean, I just sit in this week, let him get healthy, but they're not me. So I think that so before I input like the week 4 data, I had that expected spread at 10.1, which means that 7.5 is potentially an overreaction even to what we saw this past week from the Vikings offense. So I think it could be even worse than it looks. So that'd be a concern, but we'll see. If he gets into full practice, I'll still be there, but that's something to keep in the back of our minds. Cornell Patterson's role hasn't really changed, but he keeps confirming that his role is not like going away. He played 21 snaps Sunday, but turned that into 116 yards and 3 touchdowns. That is his second multi-touchdown game of the year, his second with 100+ yards in scrimmage. Calvin Ridley's role is a bit understated here, but he might be the best route for investing in this offense going forward if you were to want to. But let's pretend Cornell Patterson were on the main slate this week. He's not because he's in London. Let's pretend that he is, though. What would you be willing to allocate towards him based on his current role?
Assuming he has wide receiver eligibility?
Yeah.
I'd probably say like 66.
Yeah, but I'd say 65. Like he performed well, but it wasn't a big role change. So I think that we were in on him at 6,000, but like we can bump it up a bit, but I wouldn't bump it up too much.
I feel like because he succeeded and they like threw him a pretty slick, touchdown pass, like on a fade, basically. Unless I'm imagining things, but I'm pretty sure I saw that one. There were so many Cordero touchdowns, it's hard to keep track. Yeah. But I think that stuff probably earns him more work. But in terms of the actual what's on the paper and the snaps and like I can't get out over my skis here.
Correct. I agree. 66, 65 is probably the right range for him based on the current role. It could change, but for right now, we never want to assume change until, because we usually don't get it at Rondale Moore and Cornell Patterson. Latavius Murray was the lead back for the Ravens this past week. Tyson Williams inactive. Le'Veon Bell was the number 2 guy. Latavius wound up having 18 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown. Played 63% of the snaps. Le'Veon Bell ran 4 times for 11 yards and played 27% of the snaps. So Latavius is the lead back here. Played well enough to probably keep that. Are you willing to play Latavius Murray in DFS based on what you saw there?
Probably not. He ran 11 routes, didn't get a target.
Like we didn't use J.K. Dobbins last year very much. J.K. Dobbins tiny bit more talented than Latavius Murray. Murray got no targets. They're on Monday, which is fine. I wouldn't mind if you were on the main slate, though, because I wouldn't fear getting burned by not using him, honestly.
Yeah. It's not enough there for me to to one. Yeah.
I agree. It's not a role change, but Dalton Schultz, relevant at tight end for sure. He had 8 targets this week on 22 attempts. 2 of those were in the red zone. He has an 18% target share for the season, 23% in games without Michael Gallup, which I think is relevant because they've been running more 2 tight end personnel with no Gallup. I believe Gallup is eligible to come off IR this week, but probably will not. So we already know the salary on Schultz 62. Where would you have put it based on this current role?
Based on the current role, probably 6,062. I think it's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Honestly, based on the workload itself as like a team leader and target share, could even be higher, but I think he's like in that. I think he's right in that low 6,000 tier and that's a pretty big tier this year.
Yeah.
So,
like if I can get access to this Dallas offense, sweet. They're playing the Giants this week. That might be a pretty run heavy script again, but I mean, 23% target share is nice. Like I wouldn't project him there, obviously.
total's 50.5. And the thing is, like the Dallas games are almost always going to have high over unders.
Yeah,
and that the chance for touchdowns should be greater because the offense is good. He's got a really good quarterback. So compared to like if you compare him like straight up to TJ Hawkinson, like I feel better about TJ Hawkinson getting like maintaining like a team high target share.
right.
I probably feel better about or as like equal like as Dalton Schultz to score.
From a ceiling perspective, you go Schultz because of the touchdown potential in that offense. From a median perspective, you go Hawkinson.
Yeah.
I think that's the distinction there. Chuba Hubbard in relief of Christian McCaffrey lost a lot of passing game work to Rodney Smith. Hubbard played 47% of the snaps. Smith played 37%. Smith ran 16 routes to Hubbard's 10. Chuba got early down work, but he lost that. The passing game work, and then got vultured at the goal line by Sam Josh Allen Darnold. So that was bad. Robbie Anderson came to life, though. The first game with no Dan Arnold. I'm not sure if that matters, but like whatever. Robbie had 11 targets with 2 deep. DJ Moore had 12 targets. So let's assume CMC sits again next week. Are we okay to gloss over Chuba? And would you buy back into Robbie Anderson?
Yeah, Anderson. So I'll start with Chuba. I'm gonna gloss over him pretty easily.
They do get Philly.
He had 1 red zone carry.
He's 67. That's kind of high. Disregard.
Sorry, did you say a salary? You cut out for a second.
67.
That's too high for me.
It is. I agree. What about Robbie?
Yeah, so with Robbie, he had 7.4 FanDuel points. Based on his underlying data should have had 15.8. Good roll with that volume. Led the team in air yards at 140. DJ Moore had 114. 4 downfield targets. Like that's juicy stuff.
What's the spread? Is it still 3.5? So before inputting data from yesterday, I had that spread as being 6.5. Like it should be 6.5.
Yeah,
I don't know how much Carolina will get downgraded based on yesterday, but
and aren't you kind of down on Philly like long term?
I've bet against them in one way or another every week. I bet the under for Atlanta, Philly. I bet against them with the 49ers, bet against them with the Chiefs. What was the other game? They played another game. Oh, with Dallas. I bet against them like in terms of the spread 3 straight weeks, and it's worked every time so far. And I feel like I'm probably going to be doing that again this week.
Well, not against the spread because in week 1 you said the over under.
Well, I said the past 3 though. The past 3 I've bet against them in terms of the spread.
There's already been okay.
Yeah. So we're doing it again, I think, this week, I think.
Boy, that one Robbie, DJ Moore, Devontae Smith. I'm basically always just going to be willing to play Jalen Hurts at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, I chose to talk about the Carolina defense entering this past week. Maybe not the 85.
Well, They're not facing Dak this time.
I know. What you're
I mean,
saying.
Hurts is fine, but he's not Dak. Like, Dak's great. Dak is another level.
No. I know. I got that.
I wouldn't beat yourself up too much, champ. Although if that Eagles offensive line doesn't get healthy, that could be really bad. Brian Burns might have 6 sacks. But anyway, Chuba's role is bad. Robbie is fine, but still kind of shaky to me is the way that I view this thing. DJ Moore's role is sick. I'll go back there for sure this week, but Anderson might be a little bit hesitant to buy back in still. With no Darius Slayton or Sterling Shepard, the Giants offense got more concentrated. Kadarius Toney and Kenny Golladay had 9 and 7 targets respectively. Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley had 6. Golladay, Toney, and John Ross all had 2 deep targets. Love John Ross. That's great. Saquon's role was awesome. 25 adjusted opportunities, 126 yards. He had 3 of 5 chances inside the red zone. So Daniel Jones played well in a tough situation. I am warming up to this Giants offense as a whole. What about you?
I would assume higher on this offense than you. I like Daniel Jones, like from a season-long standpoint, just because has like on paper he's got some good talent, and we know that he can run the ball fast. He might not always stay on his feet. Sometimes he does though. But we can talk about like the target shares here. Toney led at 25%, and then it was Golladay at 19%.
Yeah.
Like that's low. Like the volume wise, that sounds good. Market share wise, I need something above 20% to want to feel like good about. So probably higher on Saquon if they're going to let John Ross at least get out there and run some sprints. He had 21 routes. That lifts the lid.
He also scored a touchdown.
He did, yeah.
He wasn't just doing cardio.
No, he wasn't. But having that ability, Evan Ingram back, at least to take away some. Like, I think if anything, this probably puts me higher on Saquon.
I agree. I think that's the big takeaway here because what will Toney's role be once Sterling Shepard's back? Because like he's good and they like him. So I don't know if the role is sustainable for Golladay and Toney. I'd be in on Golladay if they were to miss another week because they're facing Dallas. Like, I'm not sure what Trayvon Diggs will do in that game in terms of like where he would go, but I think Saquon's a big takeaway there. Like Saquon, we've seen now 3 consecutive weeks of an 80% target, or I think an 80% snap share. Really good workloads, and he's looked amazing. So facing Dallas next week, yeah, I was going to ask you. So I'll go first. For Saquon Barkley against Dallas, I would say $8,500.
So he's played basically 83% of the snaps, so at least in the past 3. I would say, would you say 83?
85.
85. I think 82.
78.
Okay.
I think that we're looking for like featured backs right now. We're getting one there at 78. He is a cash game staple to me, despite the fact they are 7.5 point dogs in that game.
Yeah, let me note to future self. Just
keep using Saquon, you idiot.
Dummy.
So we're in on Saquon for sure. Austin Eckler's back in the main slate next week. Facing Cleveland. Okay, we'll be back on an Eckler too, but that helps a lot, honestly, in terms of the slate. But Daniel Jones playing well. Respect to him. Thank you, Danny, for letting us use Saquon. Leonard Fournette, Lombardi Lenny, featured back with no Giovanni Bernard. Fournette played 81% of the snaps. He had 30 adjusted opportunities, 138 total yards, did lose a goal line rush to Ronald Jones, but let's assume that Bernard misses again next week. Name that salary for Lombardi Lenny against the Dolphins.
Boy, really, really good workload overall. His underlying data has him even better than his actual FanDuel output, so that's good to see. It's just going to be tough because backfield, but I'd probably go like 71.
I thought 7,000. And he is $6,400. So keep an eye on Gio, see what Gio's looking like there. But I think that Lombardi Lenny might be in our collective consciousness for this next week. Let's move now to situations to monitor. Brandon, go ahead and run through some things that you are seeing right now in terms of workload that are relevant going forward.
So I have one thing that jumped out to me was just Nick Chubb's role. I took him in the snake draft that you, me, and JG Zacharyson do, just because it feels a floor, but hasn't really. I mean, this past week was kind of unfortunate. Kareem Hunt outsnapped him 54% to 46%. Chubb had 6 of the 12 team opportunities in the red zone compared to 3 of 12 for Hunt. 9 routes to Hunt 16. Kareem Hunt was just in on the goal line at the end of the game, which was like not what you want to see. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is kind of dusty, very dusty. 52% of the snaps, 2 of 11 chances inside the red zone. Daryl Williams had more red zone chances this week. And CEH hasn't topped 33% of the team's red zone chances in a game yet this year. Malcolm Brown basically just overtook the Miami backfield. Myles Gaskin, 25% of the snaps, which came after I traded for him with Jim in a dynasty league.
Corey Davis, come home, yeah. My son.
Devontae Smith ran 46 routes, which was 10 more than any other Eagle. He had a team high 10 targets. His role is so secure that I think he's worth any risk involved with a high. CG Uzoma obviously blew up in an island game, but had a pretty good role. 82% of the snaps without T. Higgins, so keep an eye out for Higgins. And I kind of think Sam Darnold is like not maybe on the radar himself because he's not going to run for multiple touchdowns, but I love this offense right now. So I feel really good with DJ Moore, and I feel good with Robbie Anderson.
I agree. Darnold's playing well, and it makes sense too, given that he's got Joe Brady and good pass catchers, so I think that makes sense. Things I'm keeping an eye on, Dawson Knox keeps on coming through. His role is not huge. He has 13% of the overall targets, but it does go up to 16% from week 2 on. His snap rate lower in week 1, went up in week number 2. He has 21% of the red zone targets, so Stephon Diggs is, I think, the better route for investing in this offense because he's on the verge of like just torching a slate very soon, but Knox is viable for sure. Mo Alley-Cox saw some more work on Sunday. Played a season high 69% of the snaps, which is nice. He ran a route on just 16 of 34 dropbacks, but 5 targets, 42 yards. Not using him yet, but he's on the radar, at least as being a guy to monitor. DK Metcalf is similar to Stephon Diggs, where he's going to just torch a slate very soon. 32% of the team's total targets and 50% of both the red zone and deep targets. If they ever like hit the right script where they have, you know, a good situation for passing and good play volume, DK Metcalf has like 40 burger in his range of outcomes. Same team, Chris Carson, fully dust, which is nice. No longer have to consider him. He played 46% of the snaps. Alex Collins played 41% and got 3 of 8 red zone chances. Carson got just 1. So Carson finally officially off the list. Let's move now into some philosophical changes that we took note of for this past week. For the Titans in their first game with no A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, Ryan Tannehill struggled a lot. He averaged negative 0.02 passing net expected points per dropback against a really bad secondary. They threw 54% of the time in early downs in the first half, which is actually higher than I thought it was going to be. But Jeremy McNichols and Josh Reynolds led the way in targets, which is terrible. So how is this impacting your view of Derrick Henry, knowing the Titans offense is going to struggle without Julio and A.J. Brown?
Yeah, something we talk about all the time. We talked about that specifically with Henry. They were 8th in pass rate outside of like without garbage time included, which was nice. But I think that you have to downgrade running backs in bad situations. And don't like quote me on this, but I'm just kind of making a comparison. We have issues with like Saquon Barkley's offense. And he's like around 8,000 with his salary. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but I can't really justify 10,000 plus for Derrick Henry with tons of offensive issues too. So like at a certain point, you got to downgrade Henry from a salary standpoint.
And he was fine this week, and they get Jacksonville this week, so he'll still be very relevant.
Right.
But like, I'd feel a lot better about it if he had Julio.
Yeah.
Like if it's a 1-to-1, I'd go Saquon. But
yeah,
you know, I think I feel a lot better if we get Julio back this week. The Bears led the league in non-garbage time pace, and they ranked top 10 in pace the past 3 weeks with Justin Fields under center. So they rank 4th total. But they just didn't throw a whole lot. We talked about the Bears before. I think it is worth noting, though, their pace is not as bad as you might think. Arizona was off to a middling start in pace. They ranked 16th in pace and 4th in pass rate through the first 2 games, but they are now 4th in pace and 19th in pass rate. So Arizona is playing well, Brandon. Kyler Murray blowing stuff up. However, the target shares are still super spread out. I feel better about embracing AJ Green, given that he came through again this past week. But how are you looking at this team when everything is good except for the target shares?
There's probably a perfect comp out there for a situation like this.
The 2017 Tennessee Titans under Marcus Mariota. Kyler and Marcus are the same.
Like, there's volume, because it's not like it's the Ravens where they used to have guys at like the 22 to 17% target share, but that would lead to 5 targets for the team leader. Like, Hopkins had 7 targets, AJ Green 6. And that works out to a 24% target share for Hopkins, which is higher than it had been entering. But it's still 7 targets. And I kind of think like gone are the days where Hopkins gets consistently 30% of the team's targets, but he had 2 deep targets, 2 red zone targets. Like, I feel good with him. I just need the salary to come way down. And for everyone else, you're just kind of like guessing. And at that point, yeah, AJ Green might score twice. Rondale Moore might have, or Christian Kirk too. They might have like an 80-yard touchdown. Their paths to like 20 are very small, and all of them kind of have them. So it makes it really difficult from a daily fantasy standpoint.
It does help that the salaries are still pretty muted. Kirk is 61, AJ Green 57. And not everyone 57 has a path to a decent day. And I think AJ Green does have that at least. So,
yeah, like it does help, but it's easy to say that until you're building a lineup and you're like,
we're not using any of them in cash games. I think that's the easiest thing to cross off.
No, yeah, right. But I'm saying like you're building tournament lineups and you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna plug in Christian Kirk in this lineup, and
I'm saying is I can use him in game stacks, and at least there's a path there. I think I'd agree with you. Where like as a one-off play, it's okay to be lower.
That's not what I'm saying though.
Oh,
I'm saying you're building a lineup, and you play. Didn't you say Kirk was 61?
Mm-hmm.
So you build a lineup with Kyler in a game stack. Bring it back with some 49er for next week. You play Christian Kirk in that lineup. Now, if you don't like duplicate that lineup and play AJ Green there, you could have a really good lineup, but just guess wrong.
Yeah.
With Kirk versus AJ Green. So then you're basically saying like, okay, now I got to kind of have the same lineup. If you play this way, like which I do, you got to like have the same lineup with both of those guys or neither of those guys, or you pick one and you can pick wrong. And again, like their market shares are muted. The volume's decent, but you get 5 targets from someone at around, like 6,000. That can really just derail an entire lineup.
Yeah, I mean it could, but like we care about ceiling, not floor, and they have a ceiling. Like they can get there, they can pay off. So, it happens. It's not ideal. I'm not happy about it, but I'm still going to stack Kyler. So
I know, but I'm saying like
there's no point in me like dwelling on it because I'm going to stack Kyler anyway. So like, who cares? I can't dwell on it.
It's easy to say that, and then you're like, okay, I played Christian Kirk this week. He had 1 target.
So you're going to roll out Kyler naked.
No, I'm saying it's difficult. It's not as easy as saying like I'll just stack Kyler with Christian Kirk, and then it's like if you play Kyler,
because Jalen Ramsey plays a lot in the slot, and he's going to see a lot of Christian Kirk. So okay. I was on AJ Green a lot, and it worked out. You can predict it sometimes.
Okay,
it's all gravy, baby.
Then week 2, Christian Kirk 4 targets, 3 catches, 65 yards for 8 points.
I mean, like again, we don't focus on floor. Who cares? Like floor is not the point. Ceiling is the point. There are guys with ceilings tied to Kyler Murray. We might get it wrong. Who cares? It's DFS.
Okay.
Seattle ran a decent pace this week. They were 5th in pace. They've been pretty bad the past 2 weeks. The problem is that like they kind of scored too fast a couple of times. Their play volume has been like low, even when they've played really well. This offense, like I love DK Metcalf and I want to be in on Russ, but like they haven't had stuff align yet. Do you think that's like just a mismatch thing, or is it legitimately like we may never get them to have everything, the stars all line up for a blow up game?
Well, like, don't they kind of always have one bad half
They have
per
so
game?
far. Yeah.
Like their first half, because I was a little bit delayed this week. I was catching up through Red Zone, and I had seen some notifications like, oh, because I have Russ on one of my Yahoo teams, and I was getting like, oh, Russ threw a touchdown, like Russ ran for a touchdown. And I'm watching like the first half, and I'm like, oh, the Seahawks have like -2 yards of offense. And I'm like, how? Like what's going on here? Is the app messed up? Is my Red Zone feed just like manipulated where they're showing me the wrong game?
Right.
It's like it's a fear I have with this team. I'm always going to be interested in DK Metcalf because the underlying data is so good. I'm a little bit worn out on Russ though, because he's the kind of guy who can, like, if he's not throwing for 4 touchdowns, I know he ran for a touchdown, but hasn't been running as much or kind of a lot this year. It just feels like if he's not throwing for 4 touchdowns, it doesn't matter. And like, that's a bad feeling.
Right. And I think the issue is when he does throw for 4, it's still not like the yardage is not super
It's
high.
on like 18 attempts for
Yeah.
170 yards.
Right. Like the Jets game last year, I think he had like 4 touchdowns and scored like 23 FanDuel points. So like, I think it's fair to be like kind of annoyed. I
Yeah.
still think in like the right scripts, I will use him, but like I'm never gonna feel great about it right now. So it's kind of where I'm at as well. The Giants operating at a faster clip recently. They've been top half in pace 3 straight weeks after starting dead last in pace. And like it makes sense. You know, we've seen them kind of change things up. We saw some more Daniel Jones leg stuff in there. It does seem like the offense may have changed a bit after the first 2 weeks. We talked about that in general, though. We're inching up on this Giants offense. Let's move now to salary scroll. First time we've done this before. We are going to go through the salaries over at FanDuel for the week 5 main slate. I already looked at wide receiver, so I'm going to do quarterback and wide receiver as long as that's okay with you. Any objections?
Yeah.
Okay. So a quarterback right now, and I'm just going to shout out anything that stands out to me.
Should I wait while you do quarterback and then I'll do running back?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Justin Herbert's $7,700. I think that is very interesting. Facing Cleveland. Cleveland's defense has played well recently, but you know, I think that's at least worth noting. If Thrill were to get Julio and AJ Brown back, he's 72, but I just don't think that's probably going to happen. So might not matter there. I think that's the key standouts outside of Trey Lance, who we already discussed at $6,900. I think that Lance is a guy I'd flag, and then
Trevor
most
Lawrence,
likely
65.
Herbert.
That's still low.
Yeah, it is low, but like you were talking before about like ceiling. I'm not sure if he has like his
Not
path
yet.
to 30 is pretty clouded.
Yeah. Also, if we're gonna do it like one by one, we could probably just do these together and see what jumps out.
All right, let's go to running back then.
Running back. Henry at 10-4 is jumping out to me. I'm not saying it's wrong, but there are concerns.
What do you think with Zeke at 8,000? I think that's about where he should be. I don't think he's undersalaried, and I don't think he's oversalaried. I think that's about right.
That feels right. He should have probably been there. Or he was 7,000 this week. He probably should have been like 75-ish.
Yeah.
And I should have played him. I didn't, but I would definitely play Zeke at that salary.
Austin Eckler's 77. Take that.
Mm-hmm.
No objections there.
Nick Chubb at 75 is kind of high for me at this point.
Robinson's still high as well at $7,400. Scrolling down.
What about Najee Harris? Like, because we're not going to go out of our way to talk about the Pittsburgh offense often. It's not good. Like, do you feel any pressure to play Najee? Because he's had 16.6, 21.2, 18.1.
Can you make me regret not using him?
I feel like
offense?
If maybe he falls, like that's such good production, and he's had a touchdown in 2 of the 3 games. But that also means that with a touchdown, actually, so he's scored in 2 games and hasn't gotten to 20 FanDuel points in either of those games.
So he has a lot of red zone work. So like the 2 touchdown game is fully in play.
Yeah.
So maybe it could happen, but it's really hard for me to feel FOMO with an offense that hideous. If they start Mason Rudolph, we can talk, but like
and they host Denver next week, so that's not really going to be a game where he projects to score twice. So that's going to be the game where he does score twice.
Right. Alexander Madison is 65. Dalvin, rest up, buddy. Like let's get that ankle right. Just chill out for a bit.
DeAndre Swift's down to 6,900. He was
So that's
77
not
this
bad.
week, so that's
Yeah.
noteworthy.
I think that's the main ones.
Probably gonna do it. I mean, Trey Sermon had a lot of carries.
Yeah, I didn't get any targets, I don't think.
Yeah,
Correct?
no targets, 89 yards.
Elijah Mitchell's probably gonna be back. Sermon played better, so I don't think he's like as automatically on the bench as he would have been before with Mitchell. But and then Damien Williams. If we get no Montgomery, Williams at 60 or 58 would be pretty key focal point for this week. All right, ready for receiver?
Yeah.
Mike Williams at 77.
That's the one that jumped out to me.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what he'll do on Monday night, but
although Keenan's 72, that's low.
I saw the top 5, which is Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, DJ Moore, and then I saw Debo up there, and then I saw Mike Williams up there, and I was like, this isn't like the usual top 5.
Well, that's because there's no Tyreek.
Sure.
Yeah.
But like,
there's no Michael Pittman. There's no Diggs on the main slate. There's no Cup. There's no DK. There's actually a lot of top end receivers missing this week.
But the salaries are still
correct. They got bumped up to account for that.
Yeah.
So let's look for some dudes who are I think Keenan's undersalaried at 72. I think that's a low number for him. CeeDee Lamb is 69. I know he didn't do a lot this week, but like I'm still kind of tempted by that.
Yeah.
Marv is 66.
I'm going to have so many lineups with Marv and Derrick Henry, and that could either go really well or really poorly.
Odell is 64. Kill me.
Oh, my God.
I don't want to do it again. It was so painful.
I was away into Odell this week, too.
Did you see all those Baker throws?
Dude, I'm telling you, I cannot watch Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
I can't. I know you like him.
No,
I like him, too.
He was terrible. I love him, but he was terrible.
I feel like every week on Red Zone, it's just like they're in the red zone and then they run the ball 5 times and then like kick a field goal or one of the 2 running back scores. Yeah. I never feel like Baker is going to score a touchdown in the red zone.
No. Kenny Golladay is 62. Devontae Smith is 6,000. I prefer Devontae over Kenny Golladay between those 2 salaries, but
yeah. Aaron Robinson's down. Yeah, that's crazy.
Darnell Mooney is 56. Like, I'm not going to feel great about it, but like I can at least have some as like a salary saver there.
So I bet Laviska Shenault at 58 is in like all of the optimizers' favorite like outputs because he's going to be projected for a high floor. I don't know if I would use him. Maybe just to help bring back Derrick Henry stacks, but it's going to be more out of.
Yeah, I prefer Marv even at a higher salary there.
So Robbie Anderson, Darnell Mooney, AJ Green, Devontae Parker, I would all rather play over Shenault, I think, straight up.
Brandon Ayuk is 53. I'm not doing it, but I'm just like, Curtis Samuel is 52, facing the Saints, but like his role should expand this week and potentially no Logan Thomas. That's not bad.
KJ Osborne had 7 targets. He has had 26 yards the past 2 games, but
they're going to throw like 3 times in that game, though.
That's true.
He could have a 33% target share, get 1 target. That's the projection for that offense. All right, you ready for tight end?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no Kelsey. There is no Mark Andrews. It is bad. Waller 74. Kittle 65. Yeah.
Hawkinson 64. Schultz 62. Goddard 61.
CJ Zoma is $5,500. What on earth is happening?
That's the thing. Like he had an 82% route rate, but they're not making it easy to find.
Big shot Bob Tunyon got missed in a deep shot this past week. He's top 10 yards in 1 game this year, but he's 53. Evan Ingram is 53 as well. He had 6 targets for 27 yards. He's bad.
I mean, Max
Jared
Williams.
Cook's 52. Yeah, Max Williams is actually the pride of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Yeah, sure, you betcha that there.
735 targets.
Conklin's 51. Actually, Blake Jarwin's $5,000. Maybe that if you want to get exposure to that offense, that might not be a bad way to pivot off of Schultz, saving some salary there.
Seals Jones 49.
I'd rather use Seals Jones than like Austin Hooper I
Yeah.
guess. Like that's the same salary.
I'm just waiting. Well, never mind. Because even if they unleash Pat Frymouth entirely, I'm not going to play that off.
Yeah, his yardage upside's gonna be pretty bad. Tommy Tremble didn't run a lot of routes in week 4, but he ran more than he did previously. I'm not getting in there yet, but I'm at least keeping my eye on him. Like I'm not going to use him in week 5, but I'll keep my eye on him. I think Jared Cook might be the guy who stands out most to me from a salary perspective here.
He jumps out to me a bit. So that's telling. I should have written all these down, but maybe I'll just have to play it back. And because honestly, these guys should probably be the guys I put in my player pool that I think are relevant. This is why I thought this would be a good idea to do. Because honestly, had we done this last week, I probably would have been like, I think that's too low for Zeke.
Yeah.
Probably too low for Saquon.
Yeah.
But you just get caught up in like
just build the lineup now and put it in.
Yeah. So yeah,
Carolina's defense is $3,800. I know we're not doing defense. Also, the Vikings are 39.
You can do defense, man.
Vikings are 39 against Jared Goff. Like that's just okay. Let's go to a note to future me. After going through all this, what are you trying to make sure you don't forget about heading into week number 5?
Just play Saquon because I'm a dummy if I don't. I still think that's a really good salary for him. Possibly be more open to some of the other quarterbacks. I've really basically been playing like Kyler, Lamar, Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, and like Josh Allen sometimes.
Outside of that, it was the same list. I had Dak.
So, Kyler's only 85. That's really reasonable for him.
Yeah, it is.
But I just should probably be a little bit more open to
like a Herbert type guy.
Yeah.
And Lance.
Or a Taylor Heineke.
Nope. But Trey Lance. I would say my note to future me is take advantage of the undersalaried running backs. And to me, that means use a lot of Saquon, probably a lot of Eckler. Hopefully his role is still good in week on Monday Night Football. And then probably Damien Williams, depending on what his role looks like. So just use the undersalaried running backs, take the savings there, and then figure out the rest from there. I think that's what I would be saying to me.
Yeah.
All right. So any final thoughts for you before we close up week number 4?
I think we covered a lot of what should matter from this week, which is obviously kind of the point of this show. We didn't look ahead as much as we have done in the past.
There was a lot to recap. From
there was a lot to recap. So
had to go through a lot of that stuff, but we'll talk about that on Thursday. Make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Our week 5 recap or preview podcast will go up Thursday, probably around noon or so. It'll be live on YouTube at 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page. Find it there. Hit subscribe, and also hit subscribe on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. I'm back on the PGA podcast tomorrow because no baseball. So that'll be exciting. No idea what's happened the past couple weeks. No idea what tournament it is, but hey,
Sam Burns won.
Sam Burns won. Oh boy,
okay, it was a distance course and a Bermuda course, and Sam Burns won.
Sam Burns won. Oh man, I don't have money on this. This is stupid. Okay, whatever. Well, now I'm mad. Anyway, back there tomorrow to talk PGA. You can find that there. Also, NASCAR coming back later on this week. Believe UFC as well. So a lot of good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. If you want a Monday Night Football preview, Ryan Williams and I will be here at 4 p.m. on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages talking single game DFS and props 4 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your Monday night single game slates. And we'll talk to you once again on Thursday to preview week number 5. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.